So the best way of understanding the end of times is understanding it from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So before we move on to the main part of the topic, which is the Dajjal, regarding the end of times, there's many ahadith that you'll find in Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmizi, and other scholars of hadith have compiled their own books as well, just referring to as Kitab al-Malhama, Kitab al-Fitan. So there's so many ahadith that a person would have to go through. So keeping it simple and straightforward so everyone can understand, I mention a hadith from Muslim Sharif, which is narrated by Sayyidina Huzaifa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Sayyidina Huzaifa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam once approached us whilst we were in a circle of knowledge. So the companions alayhim ridwan were sitting amongst themselves and they were talking. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to them, "Ma tazakaruna, what are you talking about?" So it means that when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not present and he was absent from the companions alayhim ridwan, they would engage in discussing matters of the deen. So specifically on this occasion, what do they talk about? They say to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we are talking about as-sa'ah, meaning the day of judgment and everything that builds up to the day of judgment. The Prophet ﷺ says that every single one of you should be aware that إِنَّهَا لَن تَقُومَ حَتَّى تَرَوْنَ قَبْلَهَا عَشْرَ آيَاتٍ, that the day of judgment will not be established until 10 signs do not appear before it. The first sign is ad-dukhan, the smoke. The second one is Dajjal. The third one is Dabatul Ard, the earth walker. The fourth one is Tulu' al-Shams min maghribiha, the sun rising from the west. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam descending, Ya'juj Ma'juj, and 3 eclipses which will occur. And the final one is fire, which will assemble everyone in the place of Mahshar, meaning Syria. So these were the 10 signs which the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. But out of these 10 signs, the major one out of the 10 is Dajjal. The reason for that is because, like the hadith that was just mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ said that every Nabi that came, he warned his nation about the Dajjal. So he told them about the fitnas of the Dajjal. But when it comes to the Messenger ﷺ, the Messenger ﷺ exposed Dajjal. So there's a difference there now that everyone has to understand from the ahadith. So in today's talk regarding Dajjal, we'll understand why he was called, or why is he named Dajjal, what his asal is, his essence, his reality is, whether it's someone that was in the time of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam, or was he in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Was he present in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Was he born in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? What is his description and what will he do? When will he appear? From where will he appear? And what kind of illusions and tricks will he place before people so they follow him? Who will destroy him? So all of these things, inshallah, briefly touching on them from the words of the Prophet ﷺ, I'll try to explain them. So these are the main things that everyone questions about. So Dajjal being called Dajjal is because the word Dajjal in Arabic, it means to conceal something. So Ibn Hajar Asqalani in his commentary to Bukhari, he mentions that it's like you find a camel with scabies. So he has scabs over him. You'll find that the owners cover the camel. Yeah, they place mud or an ointment over the camel. The same way he says that sometimes you find an instrument or even an object and someone paints it gold or silver. Now the reason why he paints it gold and silver is because it's not really gold and silver. It's something which is fake, but he makes it appear to the one who's looking at it as if it's gold and silver. So the same with the Dajjal, what will he do? He'll conceal the truth with the batil, the falsehood. But now keeping in mind, the Prophet ﷺ says that he's the great deceiver. So Allah has given him power, strength and ability to give hukum to certain makhluk of Allah, like the sky, the oceans. And what is he given? Also, he's given knowledge. He's well aware of everyone. Everything that occurs in our life, he's informed about it. So some of us will probably be thinking, how? So Dajjal will know who your parents are. When did they die? Do you have children? Do you have a pet that died? Do you have an animal that you own that died? He'll know every single detail about you. So when he comes before the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's going to know their vulnerable state. He's going to know where to manipulate them. So his influence won't be by force. So he won't force you to believe him. But he's going to play such tricks in front of you that a person will fall into his traps and accept him. But now, how the Prophet ﷺ exposes him, that's something that no other Prophet did. So, some scholars have mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ specifically, hadith mentioned in Bukhari and in Muslim, and the Prophet ﷺ says in that hadith that Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam warned his nation, so anzala qawmahu, he warned his nation about Dajjal. But I am going to tell you something which he never told or any other Prophet told. So it's important what the Prophet ﷺ told us. But why does he mention Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam? You'll find that when it was the flood and the ark, when it was built, it was about 70 odd individuals who boarded the ark with Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, and they were saved. Hence why certain ulama refer to Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam as being Abul Bashar, even though we refer to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam as being Abul Bashar. But he repopulated the dunya. Yeah, so he, from his offspring and those people who were saved on the ark, they're the ones who increased the population, the human race. So because of that, certain scholars refer to him as Abul Bashar. And this is the reason why the Prophet ﷺ mentions Nuh alayhi salam, because in the time of Nuh alayhi salam, that's when shirk began. So we're not going to go into detail of understanding when shirk began, but we understand that tribulations actually started at that time, where aqidah became corrupt. People deviated from Tawheed. At that time, certain scholars have said that the Dajjal was created. So now, in commentary to Sharh al-Aqaid, which is written by Allama Taftazani on theology, you'll find that Abdul Aziz Farhawi in Nibrasi mentions that the Dajjal solely was created to test man. So that's why he was created. So now obviously we know that when he appears before man, he's going to be like a man. But he's not going to be like us, exactly like us. He's going to be way bigger than us, huge. So how huge he's going to be, we don't know. But that's the description that's been given by the Prophet ﷺ. That when you will see him, you'll be scared. You'll have fear. Some people will run from him. And some people will just accept him because of what he will do to them. But now remember, he ain't going to force anyone to accept him or believe in him. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentions Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, and then from various ulama you'll find aqwal sayings that it was a creation in the time of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, or either it was a magician in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, or either it was a Samiri in the time of Musa alayhi salam. These aqwal have been mentioned, but there's no ijma on them. Meaning we don't have to accept them and believe them. The same way we find in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was a young kid who then grew up in Madinatul Munawwara amongst the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Ibn Siyad, or in some narrations Ibn Sa'id, or his mother called him As-Safi. He was a child who was very mysterious. So about him we're going to discuss that also. But what do you find here? These individuals in different times of different Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam were titled as being Dajjals. But now coming back to his name, he's an individual who conceals the truth. He hides what is reality and he hides what is fake and exposes it to people as being reality. So now himself, he hides his identity. So a person can't say that this interpretation is wrong. So maybe he was in the time of Nuh alayhi salam, he was in the time of Musa alayhi salam, he was in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. He was actually in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but he was hiding his identity. But the traits and the description that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave of Dajjal was found in these individuals that came in the times of these prophets alayhimus salatu wassalam. So now, is he Ibn Sayyad, the one who lived in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? There's a disagreement on this. So scholars have said this masala of Ibn Sayyad is mushkil, meaning that it's got many ashkal and doubts in it. But if a person reads into it, you'll actually believe that he was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and he was Ibn Sayyad. So, leading companions, akabir companions like Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala, he, in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, took an oath. And he said that I promise whoever has qabza, meaning referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who owns my soul, that Ibn Sayyad is the Dajjal. Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala, companions like Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala were also present. And they said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not reject this statement of Sayyidina Umar. Now when you come into understanding a hadith, and you look at what do you refer to as being hadith, you either say that it's the qawl, the saying of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's the fi'l, the action of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or is qarar of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, meaning a companion did or said something in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not affirm it, neither did he reject it, which means that it's possible, that is correct. Yeah, it's valid. So Sayyidina Umar doing this, it means that Sayyidina Umar believed this. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar believed this. Sayyidina Jabir bin Abdullah believed this. Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala also believed this. But other than these companions, there's a vast majority of companions who lived in Madinatul Munawwara who believed Ibn Sayyad was the Dajjal. Now why did they believe this? Because there was a mysterious character, or this individual had a very mysterious character. The Prophet ﷺ gave his description of the Dajjal in hadith, and he says, Dajjal is going to be an individual who has ilm, he has knowledge, he will tell the people about the unseen. Now this child, he had not reached the age of puberty. So he wasn't mature. So it's mentioned that he was very close to becoming mature when the Prophet ﷺ investigated him with companions. So there's different narrations that groups of companions assisted the Prophet ﷺ in this. There's a famous narration of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala where he assisted the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar says that the Prophet ﷺ, he came with Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala to a Jewish tribe, and they see that the Jewish children are playing, and amongst them is Ibn Sayyad. And the Prophet ﷺ says to Ibn Sayyad that you testify, I am the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ibn Sayyad says, I testify that you're the messenger of the illiterate, Rasulul Ummiyin. So you're not the messenger of Allah, you're the messenger of the illiterate. Now, this is because the Jews of that time, they believed this about the Prophet ﷺ, and this is what they taught their children. So it means that Ibn Sayyad is a Jew, he's a Yahud. Then the Prophet ﷺ says to him, that what am I concealing from you? What am I hiding from you? Because it was famous about this child, Ibn Sayyad, that he would tell people what they're hiding in their hearts, what they're thinking about. So he says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Dukh." So the word "dukh" really doesn't mean nothing. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was hiding a verse from the Quran from Surah Dukhan, the smoke. So that this matter did not become clear to Ibn Sayyad. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam further says to him, "What are you seeing?" He says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "I am seeing a throne." Where do you see the throne? He says, I see it on the ocean. This was in reference to the throne of the shaitan. The shaitan's throne is on the ocean. So the Prophet ﷺ says, what is he telling you? Who is coming to tell you the news? He says, Sadiq or Kadhib. He's a truthful one or he's a liar. So now this means he doesn't know who's giving him the information. So he doesn't know who's giving him the information. So the Prophet ﷺ says that the matter of what was to be exposed regarding myself, what I've hidden from him, All of that has become confused for this individual. So the Prophet ﷺ leaves this individual. In one narration it says that he says to the Prophet ﷺ, do you testify that I am the messenger of Allah? So the Prophet ﷺ says, I believe in Allah and all the messengers of Allah. Sayyidina Umar says to the Prophet ﷺ, O Prophet of Allah, grant me permission that I take his head. But now the Prophet ﷺ says to him, O Umar, if he is the one that who we're thinking of, meaning Dajjal, then you won't be able to harm him. So it means that even at that time the Prophet ﷺ still was thinking and assumed him to be the Dajjal. Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ never rejected this opinion of the companions, alayhim ridwan. So now when people discuss the matter of Ibn Sayyad, they bring up the hadith of Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, radiyallahu ta'ala, which is mentioned in Muslim Sharif. So I'm going to try refraining from reading all the Arabic. I'll tell you in English. So the Prophet ﷺ, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala, he mentions that he was traveling with some Hajis who were performing Hajj. And in that caravan of Hajis, Ibn Sayyad was also present. So now he had grown into a young man. And he says that everyone had heard the news that he has accepted Islam. So now we consider him a Muslim. But still everyone was in doubt about him. Why? Because he had a lot of the traits of the Dajjal. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri says that during this journey we stopped at a place and everyone was to take rest. So some people went to their camels, their goats. They took milk from them, drank, rested. So he says, I went under a tree and Ibn Sayyad follows me. And he comes and also places his stuff, his luggage under the tree. And then he takes some milk from his animal and he offers it to Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala, he says that I say to him that the weather is really hot. The milk that you've taken from the others is also hot. I need something cold. So in actual fact, the reason why he didn't want to take it was because he considered Ibn Sayyad being a deviant. So even though that's not part of our topic, but it means that you don't take anything from the deviant. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala, he says that Ibn Sayyad becomes unhappy, sad. And it's as if he's going to cry. And he says to Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, you see this tree, I want to take a rope and I want to hang myself from this tree. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala says, why? What's the reason? He says, because what everyone's saying about me, everyone's saying that I'm the Dajjal. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri begins to think to himself that, he feels sorry for it. So he says that you're a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have you not heard the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that the Dajjal is a Yahudi, he's a Jew. I'm a Muslim. Dajjal won't have children, I have children. Dajjal cannot enter Makkah and Medina, I've entered Makkah and Medina. So he begins to give this argument to Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala. Abu Sa'id says, I become satisfied. I actually began to believe that he cannot be Dajjal. But now remember, come back to his name. He's a deceiving individual. Yeah, he's a deceiving individual. So what does Abu Sa'id al-Khudri say? He says, but then all of a sudden Ibn Sayyad says, but I know what his real name is. I know what the name of Dajjal is. I know where he's born. I know where he's going to come from, which land he's going to appear from. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri begins to look at him and think, how do you know this? So he says, if Allah gave me the position of Dajjal, I would take it. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri turns away from him and says to him that there's no longer any relationship between me and you. So now, some individuals who have interpreted this hadith, they say that Ibn Sayyad is not the Dajjal. This is a mistake by Sayyidina Jabir bin Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala, Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala. But here the reason why in the beginning I mentioned the qarar of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam never rejected. So who are we to reject it? If those companions like Jabir bin Abdullah took an oath, a qasam, and they said that he is the Dajjal, so we have to accept it. It's a valid opinion, mainstream opinion. But the second opinion is about the one which is mentioned regarding Tamim ad-Dari radiyallahu ta'ala, but we'll come to that. Now, before we move on to that opinion, one has to understand that Ibn Sayyad, even though he mentioned these points, that he can enter Makkah, leave Makkah, enter Medina, leave Medina, he has children, it wasn't the time of the khuruj of Dajjal. The Prophet ﷺ said that the Dajjal will appear at the end of times. When he appears at the end of times, that's when it's going to be a trial and a test. So when he appears at the end of times, the signs that the Prophet ﷺ has told is that he won't have children when he appears at the end of times. At the end of times, he won't be able to enter Makkah and Medina. But him being present in the time of the Prophet ﷺ is not the end of times. There's so many major signs to appear before Dajjal. So the scholars say there is still a possibility that Ibn Sayyad is Dajjal. Now, there's a famous hadith that we're going to talk about later when we discuss the actual Dajjal. The Prophet ﷺ says that there will be Yahud, Jews from Asbahan, Isfahan, a place in Iran. 70,000 Jews from Iran will follow. Yeah, they will follow and be in the ittiba of Dajjal. These 70,000 Jews are going to be from Isfahan. You could say that they're Persian Jews. But now the amazing thing is that in Kitab al-Fitan of Nu'aym ibn Hammad radiyallahu ta'ala, he mentions the same hadith of Jabir bin Abdullah where he took an oath. And he says that Jabir bin Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala said that when the Muslims conquered Isfahan, way after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that once I was sitting on a house rooftop and he sees that I saw a procession of Jews walking through the streets and they wait for an individual. And he says then all of a sudden Ibn Sayyad appears and they go into a cave. The same way some companions in relation to the book of Nu'aym ibn Hammad, Kitab al-Fitan, he mentions that they've also mentioned that when the battle of the Murtaddeen took place, the battle of the Murtaddeen meaning Musaylama Kazzab, the ones who rejected giving zakat, and then he announced prophethood at the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala an, many companions left Madinatul Munawwara to fight in this war. And he says that Ibn Sayyad wasn't found. Ibn Sayyad wasn't found amongst the living or the dead. So he just disappeared. The same way some companions have mentioned, hadith by Abu Dawood Sharif, that when the Battle of Harra took place, so the Battle of Harra is when Yazid ibn Muawiyah attacked Madinatul Munawwara after Karbala. When he attacked Madinatul Munawwara, they say that many were killed from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Tabi'een. But they say that amongst them, they still did not find Ibn Sayyad. So he was an individual who just disappeared. In Kitab al-Fitan is mentioned that there was a storm, and the storm just picked him up and took him and placed him on an island. And that island is where the similitude of him was shown. A mithal, an example of him was shown to who? Tamim ad-Dari radiyallahu ta'ala an. So now the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari radiyallahu ta'ala an is a famous hadith. Mainstream opinion is that that's the evidence that a person would hold to say that in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the Dajjal was present. Now in the books of Aqidah it said, is he born or is he actually mawjood? So now about his birth also, a hadith is mentioned where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave description of his appearance. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that his father is going to be a very skinny, frail looking individual, tall. Yeah? With a pointy nose, broad forehead. His mother is going to be a short, fat woman with long hands. So the companions, alayhim ridwan, what did they do? They began to investigate Medina. So they went through the houses of Medina looking for Jews who fit that description. And they found a couple. The Prophet ﷺ said for 30 years they won't have no children. For 30 years they will have no children. But then after 30 years, Allah will bless them with a child, but that child is going to be of no use. He's going to be disobedient. He will not benefit his parents. He will sleep, but his heart will be awake. So what does this mean? It means that people will be thinking that he's not alert, he's not conscious, but he hears everything, he understands everything. So the Prophet ﷺ's companions, alayhim ridwan, some of them went to this house and they said, do you have a child like this? The parents said, yes. Then they went to the child and they said to him, who are you? Yeah. So he had a discussion with them. So those companions, alayhim ridwan, are the same ones who said that that's Ibn Sayyad. He was the one who was mutawallad, born in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But now, this doesn't contradict with anything. The reason why it doesn't contradict with anything is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created him solely for what purpose? To try and test individuals. So this was an identity of the Dajjal, which was shown to the Prophet's companions, alayhim ridwan. Maybe a different identity was shown in the time of Nuh alayhi salam, in the time of Musa alayhi salam, in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. But what do we understand from all of this? We have to understand the words of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, how he exposed the Dajjal. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he taught the companions alayhim ridwan about the traits and the characteristics of Dajjal, one of the main points that he mentioned in the hadith of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam is that no prophet before me told his nation this, but I am telling you this. He is going to have a deformed eye. He is going to have a deformed eye. So now, you can find many people with a deformed eye. So Imam Tabarani, he mentions a hadith, but the hadith is weak. He says that when the Dajjal will appear in the end of times, you will see that first he's going to perform magic. Then he's going to claim he's a prophet. Then he's going to claim that he's a God. But the hadith has been mentioned as being weak. He says that when he claims to be a God, that's the time that his eye is going to become disfigured. It's going to become deformed. So now going back to Ibn Sayyad, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala mentions that once he was walking through the streets, and the same way he was in doubt about Ibn Sayyad, that is he actually Dajjal or not. He says that when he's walking through the streets, he comes across Ibn Sayyad and he sees that Ibn Sayyad's eye is inflamed, like it's popping. And it looks like there's something wrong with it. So he says, what's happened to your eye? Ibn Sayyad says, I don't know. He says, the eye is in your head and you don't know. So Ibn Sayyad says, if Allah wills, He can place this very eye in your stick. So Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu begins to beat him with the stick. In some narrations it's mentioned that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar says that I didn't know that I was beating him with the stick. But the companions who witnessed and observed this, they said that you were beating him with the stick. He said he was making the sound of a donkey. He was making the sound of a donkey. And he says then all of a sudden, Ibn Sayyad begins to grow. He begins to grow. This is in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Umar says, he begins to grow and he covers the entire street. He says, when I see the size of him, I run. And I go and enter the house of Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha. And then Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala says to Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala, do you not know that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that the Dajjal is going to expose himself, his actual identity. Yeah, he's going to expose himself when he becomes angered. So do not anger him. So again, now this affirms what? That maybe Ibn Sayyad is the Dajjal. So coming back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he says that the Dajjal is going to have a deformed eye. This is the first test that we have to understand when the Dajjal is going to appear. The test is going to be, because it's becoming a bit of a tongue twister saying the Dajjal, I just refer to him as the Antichrist. So when the Antichrist is going to appear, or the impostor is going to appear, the Prophet ﷺ gave this sign and this trait that you need to identify his eye. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say this? Because he's going to be an individual who either is going to claim da'wah of Nabuwah, or either is going to claim he's a God. Number one, if he's a prophet cannot be born disfigured like that. Every prophet is a creation of Allah which He created unique and beautiful. So ascribing a defect to a prophet leads to kufr. So a believer wouldn't believe this. Now, why would he believe it about Allah? We see prophets, meaning the nations prior, before us, they saw prophets, they're humans, but no one has seen Allah. The Prophet ﷺ says that no one can see Allah before he dies. So until he does not die, he won't see Allah. So now, in the time when the Dajjal is going to appear, the impostor is going to appear, he's going to claim that he is God. But now, he's going to have so much power and ability and strength, and he's going to have knowledge about every single individual. What is he going to do? He's going to manipulate you. The tricks and the illusions that he's going to place before people. Remember, he's not going to force you. He's going to bring the fake things in front of you, make them look realistic. He knows at that time that there's going to be a drought regarding currency. So economically, he's going to affect us. Militarily, he's going to affect us. And the same way politically, he's going to affect us. At that time, politically, how it's going to affect us is because prior to the Dajjal coming, one of the major signs is the caliphate will drop. There is not going to be no Khalifa until Imam Mahdi appears. But now, the Prophet ﷺ is giving an indication towards that time when he will appear, people will be weak in Aqidah. Why do I say this? Because people will believe in Allah, but they don't know the traits, of who, the characteristics of the sifat, the attributes of Allah. So now if we ask people, can you name certain attributes of Allah? They won't be able to name them. This is a build-up to the fitan of Dajjal. So the same way a time is going to come when the Dajjal is going to appear, people won't know, does Allah have an eye or not? Anthropomorphism exists in this time. People ascribe a body to Allah. So think about those people who ascribe a body to Allah, are they going to be in doubt about the eye? Maybe not. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that when the Dajjal is going to appear near Madinatul Munawwara, what's going to happen? Medina is going to shake. So there's going to be an earthquake, 1 earthquake, 2 earthquakes, 3 earthquakes. Each time the earthquake is going to happen, the munafiqs and the disbelievers from Madinatul Munawwara will leave and they will join the army of Dajjal. So again, it means that there will be people who will be amongst us who will call themselves Muslims. They will believe in Allah, they will believe in the Prophet ﷺ, but their iman is really nothing. Their iman is nothing. So it comes back to the Aqidah. Now why Aqidah? Because if a person believes Dajjal is the God, if he is the God, he makes rain come down from the skies, he makes the ocean water cover the earth, and many other signs that I mentioned, we mentioned them later. If he does all of these illusions and tricks before people, people need to first realize and understand, if he's God, why can he not make himself beautiful? Why do I say beautiful? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that he's going to be the most ugliest man. So there was a man, Abdul Uzza ibn Qatal, before the Prophet ﷺ was born. He was from the Banu Quza'a, and he was a king. This individual was labeled as being the most ugliest man of that time. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith says, when he says that he's going to have deformed, disfigured eye, he says similar to Ibn Qatal. So it doesn't mean that he's going to be exactly like him. The Prophet ﷺ was saying he's going to be ugly like him, but worse. He's going to be worse in appearance. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he gives this description, is an indication towards one's iman at that time and his aqidah. So how is the individual's aqidah going to be at that time? Is he going to actually understand what is befitting to ascribe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or ascribe to a God? What is the criteria of God? Who has the right of being a God? All of these things are part of your aqidah. The Prophet ﷺ then says that he's going to be a huge guy. You could say he's going to be a fat, stocky, muscular individual. And the individual is going to have some weird looking legs. So he says that his legs are going to be curved. So in other words, you could say crooked legs. Yeah? But this individual, when he walks the entire earth, he's going to carry two things with him. Now how he carries them, this is to understand when he appears. So he's going to have, according to some narrations, two things. Either it's going to be a fire and water, or either it's going to be a Jannah and fire. So in actual fact, the Jannah which he is going to have with him, the Jannah that he has with him is going to be the fire of hell. And the one that he refers to as being the fire of hell is going to be actually Jannah. So now again this comes back to the aqidah of people. The Prophet ﷺ mentions these two things in the hadith. It's repeated in many hadiths. So he's going to be deformed from the eye, and he's going to have Jannah, and he's going to have Nar. Why Jannah and Nar again? So the deformed eye, we understand that a God cannot have a deformed eye. He cannot even have a body. Yeah, so forget the eye. Why Jannah and Nar? Because again, some people question the things which have been mentioned in the Quran. When people talk about the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire, and they say that the fire became cold. Yakuni bardan wa salama. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran mentions that become cold for Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. They say that the people who visualize and observe this, for them it was an actual fire. But for Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was placed into the fire, is Jannah. Yeah, he was chilled. So the same way, in the time of Dajjal, when he comes with these two things, it's not far-fetched, it's not ba'id. It's the same thing. Like the way the similitude is given in the Quran of the fire of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, the same way that Dajjal will appear and he'll have these two things with him. So now, whoever believes in him, they'll go into his Jannah. Whoever disbelieves in him, he'll throw them into his fire, which in actual fact is the Jannah. So now, the Prophet ﷺ gives descriptions of the shaitan, of Dajjal, the impostor, when he appears. What things will he be doing? So when he appears now, which direction is he going to appear from? That's going to be mentioned in the hadith that I mentioned from Muslim Sharif of Tamim al-Dari. Now the hadith of Tamim al-Dari is very important. Reason being, Ibn al-Sayyad, we've understood that he could be the one who was present in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, labeled as Dajjal, or either it's going to be the hadith of Tamim al-Dari, which is a second mainstream opinion. This opinion is the latter opinion that most of the scholars refer to most of the time, because this was after Ibn al-Sayyad. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned Ibn al-Sayyad, the companions understood who Ibn al-Sayyad is, but then later this individual, Nasrani individual, whose name was Tamim al-Dari, came and accepted Islam on the hand of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's a very lengthy hadith by Fatima ibn Qais, bint Qais. So she says that like regular players, we attended the Masjid, the Prophet ﷺ, they gathered everyone for a sermon. And he says that the reason why I've gathered you today here is not to scare you or warn you about anything, but to give you news that an individual, Tamim al-Dari, a Nasrani, has accepted Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentions this hadith, he mentions it word for word how Tamim al-Dari radiallahu ta'ala mentions it to the Prophet ﷺ. So Tamim al-Dari, he mentions to the Prophet ﷺ, again summarizing the hadith, he says that we were in a journey going through sea, and it had been about a month. The waves were throwing us this direction, that direction, until we ended up on an island. And some narrations has mentioned that they walked through a village, and some narrations has mentioned there was a deserted island, and they came across a man, not even a man, a creature. This creature referred to himself as Jassasa. The word Jassasa, it comes from the word Jasus. In our language, we understand Jasus or Jasus as being a spy. Jassasa is a word in the Arabic language which is used with is used with more emphasis. So exaggeration is in it. He's not like a normal spy. Tamim al-Dari says that when they meet this Jassasa, this creature, they don't even actually realize if he is a creature until they don't converse with him, speak to him. They say, what are you? He says, I'm Jassasa. Tamim al-Dari gives the description. He says, we couldn't understand the front or back to him. So we couldn't understand, is this front or is this his back? So that's how unusual this creature is. It was hard to identify. What is Jassasa? He is the one who informs and gives all of the information to Dajjal. Now, the Prophet ﷺ says that the Dajjal, the impostor, will have news and akhbar about everyone. Now, this is very important for us to understand in this time. Because we find that everything from the time of Sayyidina Adam a.s. up until the day of judgment is a build-up or in preparation for Dajjal. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Munzu kanat dunya, every fitna from the time that the earth was created, from the world was created, saghiratan aw kabiratan, whether it is small or big, is yuda'u lid-Dajjal. It was created for the preparation of Dajjal. So every fitna which is detrimental to one's iman, his faith or his deen, we say that that fitna is in preparation for Dajjal. But remember, every fitna is not bad. Some fitnas are good. Yes, or some trials and tests are good. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a person closer to himself by trialing him and testing him, or making him face tribulations in different ways. But this fitna, specifically of Dajjal, is going to be the one which is going to affect your iman. So Jassasa in this time, it refers to everything that you would use. So now we know, for example, technology that we use. Technology that we use, we don't even know that, like you have passwords, you have usernames, you have email addresses, you have Apple IDs. Yeah, there's so many things. Yeah, you know probably better than me. Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, everything they use. You don't actually know what's behind all of that. Yeah, so a person recently spoke to me and he said to me, stop using Google and you used to use something else. I think it was called Brave or something. Yeah, so I'm not sure about it, but when he mentioned this, he said that he's spoken to a few people and they said to him that whenever after a conversation that they've had with someone, when they've browsed through Google for some reason has been putting pop-ups and advertisements about things that they recently were just talking about. So the brothers became aware and they were thinking, this will be unusual. So the same way we see this as well, you put something into Google and then after that, you'll probably start reading anonymous emails about something that you entered in Google search. So you'll find that everything is interlinked and is connected. The same way you find our birth certificates, our passports, and then there was a certain time that they actually chipped our passports, then the chip went away. So all of these things, when a person keeps them in mind, there's no way that you're going to get away from the Dajjal system. So I'm not going to say that the system is Dajjal, because he is not a system. Yeah, but you would say that all of these are fitnas, which are fitnas that the Dajjal receives his information from. So now Jassasa, in that time, he appeared as a creature, but now you would say that it's everything. It's everything that takes information about us. This information actually is going to go back to Dajjal. The Prophet ﷺ says that he knows everything. He knows your appearance. He knows the animals that you know. So why is he going to know this? How is he going to know this? It's because of the information that he gets from his Jassasa. So Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari radiallahu ta'ala, he says that the Jassasa says there's a man very eager to meet you in that cave. They go into the cave and they meet a man. He looks human, but he's huge. They've never seen a human being like him. They say that he's changed. His hands are tied to his neck and he's shackled in chains. And every time he moves, the chains move. So they say to him, who are you? He says that I'm more in danger than you. So in some narrations that's not mentioned, but he says to them that I'm in more danger than you, because I'm chained. You can beat me, do whatever you want to me. So you should first tell me who you are. So they say that, look, we're travelers like this. They mention the whole story, how they were in the sea and then they came to the island, they met Jassasa. Jassasa told them that there's a man in the cave and this is the reason why we came into the cave. But now, Dajjal, he says to them that inform me and tell me about three things. So in some narrations there's more things. The first thing he says is the Nakhlistan of Baysan fruitless? Meaning, the date fields or the date trees of Baysan. So Baysan now is towards the river Jordan, Jordanian river, and I think that links with the Galilee Sea. So in other words, you would say that Baysan is on the outskirts of Gaza. Yeah, Baysan. Some refer to it as being a land in Hijaz, but it's not. The Baysan that he was referring to is in Palestine. So he says, do the trees of this land still have the dates growing? They say yes. So he says that then that's fine. A time will come that they will have no dates. So now why does he say this? Because one of the signs is that after the appearance of Dajjal, there won't be any dates growing. The second thing he asks is about the Sea of Galilee. Yeah, Bahr al-Tabr. He says, has it become dry? And they say, no, it's full of water. The third thing that he asks is about Ain al-Zughar, or Ain al-Zughara, which is a place in Syria. Some scholars have mentioned the reason why it's called Zughar or Zughara, or the spring, or the fountain of Zughar, is because she was a daughter of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And that's the reason why that region or that area was named this. So he mentions these few questions. And then he says that, is there a man who claims that he's the Prophet of Allah? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam referring to him. They say yes. And he says, have the Arabs fought against him? They say the Arabs fought with him. Did they accept his message? Tamim ad-Dari says, yes, they accept his message. He says then it's better for them to accept what he's telling them. So this full lengthy hadith is mentioned, and then the Prophet ﷺ says that, referring to Madinatul Munawwara, he says in some narrations Tiba, in some narrations Tayyiba, but the Prophet ﷺ hits the minbar. He says, Tayyiba, 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 referring to Madinatul Munawwara, that is pure. Medina is pure. Medina is pure. And then the Prophet ﷺ says that he's going to come from the Yemeni Sea. Bal, he's going to come from the Syrian Sea. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, no, he's going to come from the east, Mashriq. He's going to come from the east, the Mashriq. He's going to come from the east, Mashriq, 3 times. The Prophet ﷺ says this. So where will the Dajjal come from? He will come from the east. Now, Imam Hakim, the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, they mention a hadith of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala, where Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala says that he will come from Khurasan. So Khurasan is in the east. Whether he specified the place, it doesn't matter. But we know that he's going to come from the east. The same way Imam Muslim mentions a hadith where he will appear from Isfahan. Yeah, a region which is not in Khurasan, but is close to Khurasan. Yeah, so Khurasan, you have to understand that one part of it is a part of Iran that goes on to Afghanistan where Herat is. So certain people say that it's Afghanistan, but it's an area which is in between Afghanistan and Iran. Well, it's part of both of the countries. So Isfahan now is very important. Either we literally take it that there will be 70,000 Jews, like I mentioned previously, the hadith, that will come from Isfahan and they will follow Dajjal. But now if you do research, you'll find that there's not much Jews there. 70,000 is a very big number. The population of Jews is around about 9,000 in Isfahan. But the amazing thing is that most of the Jews which reside in occupied Palestine are Persian Jews. And the Persian Jews actually come from Isfahan. So now, it's mentioned that the Dajjal will travel the entire earth. So Sayyidina Nawas, which is a different companion, he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ, when he would inform us and tell us about Dajjal, he would mention it in such a way that sometimes he would make his voice low and then would make it high. So sometimes you're talking to a person and then you see a person appear that you're talking about. And then you lower your voice. And then when he goes away, then you make your voice higher. You begin to talk normal. So Sayyidina Nawas, he says that the Prophet ﷺ was telling us about Dajjal, and then the Prophet ﷺ leaves us. He left us in a state that our hearts came out. So literally they didn't come out, but what I mean that they became so fearful that their hearts were in their mouths. We hear about the Dajjal, but it's amusing to us. It's a form of entertainment for some of us. We don't actually think about how severe it's going to be. So the Prophet ﷺ says when the Dajjal is going to come, when you're going to be walking past a grave, you're going to say, only if I was in that grave of that individual. The Prophet ﷺ says that you're going to be tying your daughters and your mothers up at home because that they might run away to the Dajjal. So now, if someone's sister or daughter or mother ran away, you know how crazy you go, but you won't be able to do nothing at that time. Dajjal is a person that you won't be able to face. Sayyidina Umar, who the shaitan would run from, the Prophet ﷺ said to him that you cannot harm him. So you have to think at that time, this trial and test of the Dajjal is going to be very harsh, very severe. Nawas says that the Prophet ﷺ returned and he sees that we all saddened and we all, faces and our colors and everything is changed. And our voices are very low. The Prophet said, what's wrong with you? They say, oh Prophet of Allah, you told us about Dajjal and you left us in a state that our hearts have actually come out. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned something now. He says, that why are you scared? Why do you have fear of Dajjal? Why did he say to his companions? Because he was saying to them that your iman is solid, is strong. Your iman is not weak. He says that if Dajjal comes, ana hajiju. He says, I am the one who's going to oppose him. So why are you scared? Because the companions at that time were thinking that Dajjal was hiding behind the date trees. So that's how close they thought that the Dajjal was. The Prophet says that if I am here, why are you scared? But now, this you connect it to the hadith of Tamim al-Dari. And then you understand all of those other hadiths that everyone knows, the common hadith. That Dajjal will not enter Madinatul Munawwara, he will come and hide behind Mount Uhud. He will hide and the angels then will turn his face and say, go Syria, man. He's going to go to the direction of Syria. Yeah, but why? And the Prophet ﷺ says, Tayyiba, Tayyiba, Tayyiba is the land of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that he cannot come in front of me. If he comes in front of me, he's gone, he's finished. But the Prophet ﷺ says that he's going to come in a time that every man will have to oppose him himself. You will stand up to him. How are you going to stand up to him? You won't be able to fight him. It's the aql that Allah has given you, the iman that Allah has given you, and the knowledge that Allah has given you. So it's very important at a time of trial and tribulation that you learn the deen. You learn your aqidah. That's what's going to safeguard you at the time of Dajjal. Yeah, so if you believe that I believe in Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I know these are the signs of the Day of Judgment, I know this, that ain't going to save you. You need to know who is Allah. The ma'rifat of Allah is something that you need to learn. The attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that you need to learn. And Nawas then says, we said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is his description? The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّهُ شَابٌ قَطَةٌ. He is a young looking man and he has curly hair. In some narrations mention that his hair is going to be like snakes, curled up. When a person will look at him, you will see the عَيْنُهُ طَائِفَةٌ. One of his eyes will be popping. Yes, above the surface, the eye socket. And he says that أَنَّهُ شَبِّهُ عَبْدِ الْعُزَّى ibn Qatal. Again, the resemblance was given with Ibn Qatal, the ugliest man before the Prophet ﷺ was born. The one who was born before the Prophet ﷺ, he was a king from the Banu Quza'a. The Prophet ﷺ then says that if any one of you sees him or comes in front of him, you should recite the verses of Surah Al-Kahf. The first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf. This is what will protect you. So again, coming back to the Quran, the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, إِنَّهُ خَارِجٌ خَلَّةً بَيْنَ الشَّامِ وَالْعِرَاقِ. He's going to appear between the lands of Iraq and Sham. Eastern region again. So not specifying the land. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَعَاثَ يَمِينًا فَعَاثَ شِمَالًا. Whichever direction he's going to go, he's just going to cause chaos. So now that chaos we'll understand from other hadiths what chaos he's going to cause. But in this hadith of Nawas, the companions say that the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ya ibadallah fasbutu. O servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remain steadfast. Yeah, hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the only thing that's going to save you. The companions say, Ma labsuhu fil ard. How long is he going to remain upon earth? The Prophet ﷺ says, Arba'una yawman. 40 days. One day is going to be kasanatin, like a year. The second day is going to be like a month. The third day is going to be like a week. And the rest of the days are going to be like normal days. But now, when a person tells you something like this, what are you going to be thinking about? Everyone is going to be thinking, how is that one day going to be so long? You know what was priority to companions alayhim ridwan is amazing. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, who was Masih al-Huda. Yeah, he was the Messiah, the truthful one. Dajjal is Masih al-Dalala, the imposter. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, in the previous lecture that we had last month, what did I mention? One of the things that he mentions, Allah mentions in the Quran, he gave targheeb to everyone about salah. Not the Muslims, we're talking about the Christians. He even taught the Christians that you should worship Allah, salah. And then one of the signs of the Day of Judgment is, coming before the Day of Judgment or prior to Dajjal, is the salah will be abandoned. You won't find many people reading salah. So this is something which is found now. But look how amazing the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they say, oh Prophet of Allah, that day how are we going to read salah? They're not worried about anything else. The thing that is worrying them, how are we going to read our salah? So now a person has to think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us short days and long days. In summer we have long days. Winter we have short days. What did the Prophet ﷺ say regarding the weather? He says, when Jahannam inhales, it's winter. When it exhales, yeah, that's the heat of Jahannam. It's the heat of Jahannam. That day that Dajjal is going to appear and it's going to be equivalent to 1 year, yeah, in length. That's how it's going to seem to us. It's the same thing that you have in a summer's day. So the Prophet ﷺ said, فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ قَدْرَهُ. Yeah, just calculate the timings of salah. So like the way you have Fajr in summer, 4 o'clock in the morning, then have Dhuhr, 2 o'clock, 7-8 hours difference. Then after another 5-6 hours is Asr. After another 2 hours is Maghrib. After another 2 hours is probably Isha. And according to some, no Isha. So do you understand? So this is going to happen the same way you're going to calculate this. So the companions alayhim ridwan, this was their concern at the time. They weren't worried about anything else. The Prophet ﷺ then is asked by the companions alayhim ridwan, O Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how will you travel the earth? The Prophet ﷺ, كَالْغَيْثِ إِسْتَدْبَرَتْهُ الرِّيحِ. It's going to be like a cloud which is pushed, yeah, by wind. It's like a cloud which is pushed by wind. So either a person referred to it, some people did interpret it years ago, but now you have so many people who are giving lectures about Dajjal. Yeah, they give opinions, valid opinions, because these words are open for interpretation. So the time of the companions alayhim ridwan, they didn't observe these things. They didn't have mushahadat of these things, but now we are observing certain things which make us realize those words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now in one hadith is mentioned this, in one hadith is mentioned that Himar al-Hadid, he'll have a donkey made out of iron. He'll travel on a donkey made out of iron. That's the hadith that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani used. So when he announced that he's a prophet of Allah, he said that the English and the British are Dajjal, and the donkey is the train. It's the iron train. But then so many scholars refuted him in this and said to him that if it's the donkey is the train of Dajjal, the train is the donkey of Dajjal, then why do you travel on it? Do you understand? So these things were opposed. His he was refuted at that time. But now this is the mainstream opinion where it says, istadbarathu ar-rih. This is an indication to the sky. So now it means that at that time there will be something in the sky which will be used as transport. So we know within minutes and hours, days, a person can travel the whole world in an airplane. So that's what it means that Dajjal will travel using the technology of that time. Yeah, so in hadith it's not clearly mentioned like that, because at that time you never had those things. So the Prophet ﷺ mentions that, and he says, فَيَأْتِي عَلَى الْقَوْمِ فَيَدْعُومَهُمْ فَيُؤْمِنُونَ وَيَسْتَجِيبُونَ لَهُ فَيَعْمُرُ السَّمَاءَ فَتُمْتِرُ وَالْأَرْضَ فَتُنْبِتُ, and then the animals gather. So the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith mentions that he is going to give an indication to the sky is going to rain, it's going to bring down rain, the earth is going to produce, and then animals from every direction are going to come running, they're going to eat from that produce. And those people who believe in him, their animals, their cattle, their sheep, their goats, their camels, their cows, they'll be full to the stomach. So he says that they have a wide waist. Yeah? So you know that people nowadays when they go on a diet, it's because of the waist. So those animals will be full. Yeah? Their waist will be full. You'll see the meat hanging off them. But then there'll be a nation that he'll go to. And those people will say that we don't accept you. Yeah, if we don't accept you, what will you do? He will just leave them. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said he ain't going to force them. So now, in a narration is mentioned that prior to the Dajjal appearing, you're going to have 3 years of drought, of rain. The first year, the sky is going to hold back a third of rain. The second year is going to be 2/3 of rain. The third year, there's going to be no rain. No rain, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to produce. And then so many animals and crops, vegetation, all these things are going to finish. The Prophet ﷺ said that Dajjal is going to use this to his benefit. He's going to come and he's going to see. In Muslim Sharif, there's a hadith that's mentioned that when he comes, he's going to also have a mantle of khubz, chapatis, bread. Why is he going to have that? People are going to be hungry at the time. Yeah, so he's going to give them sustenance, rizq. Here, Allah is the one that you make dua to for rizq. I am God. Here, I'll give you rizq. So in the hadith, this is mentioned. So this is how he's going to trick people. And people are going to fall into that. And they're going to think that he is the God. He's given us food. He's given us rain. He's making things grow up on earth. He's made our animals and everything better. So when people begin to think this, they will believe in him. Some people won't believe in him. Then, what will he do? He will go past certain holes. Yeah, so these holes, khariba, it doesn't really mean a hole, but they usually translate as a hole. It means deserted areas. Yeah? Areas where no one would go to. When he walks past these areas, what happens? He is going to give an indication to those holes, and the kunuz, the treasures of the earth will come. Again, now indication. Certain companions like Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala an, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala an, they mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said towards the end of times you'll find that the gold and silver will be very rare. So we find this now economically, that the Dajjal system has affected us. Why we have paper money? This is globalized. Yeah. So at that time, gold and silver is going to be very rare. Man are going to die for it. Yeah, they're going to be dying for it. So what is he going to do? He's going to make those treasures come back out. Those treasures are going to follow him. So he says, ittaba'u Dajjal, they'll follow the Dajjal. But obviously it doesn't mean that now you're going to see gold with, feet, and he's going to be running behind the Dajjal with legs. It means at that time they'll have, transport, things that they'll be carrying these things in carriages. Yeah? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions this, and then he says that he's going to come to a land. He's going to go to every village. He's going to travel the entire earth, except for 2 places, Makkah and Medina. When he comes to Madinatul Munawwara, a man is going to come to him. When this man comes to him, this man is going to waste his energy. Waste his energy. In which way? In some ahadith is mentioned that this is Khidr alayhi salam, the Prophet of Allah, or some refer to him as a wali of Allah, who's still alive, walking on earth, Khidr alayhi salam. So it's mentioned that Khidr alayhi salam will come to this individual, Dajjal, outside Madinatul Munawwara, and then he will challenge him. So this is one opinion. One opinion is from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest martyr will come. There is no martyr like this man. The Prophet ﷺ, when he mentions that hadith, he mentions something very important. The Prophet ﷺ mentions that when this man appears before Dajjal, he will meet masalih. What is masalih? So we mentioned like jasasa is all the technology that the Dajjal will use. Masalih is that he'll have an army. Some scholars translate masalih as being military base. So it means that every region that he will go to, he'll have a military base. So now obviously everyone can understand this day and age, all of the military bases that you will find. Yeah? So masalih is the ones who take aslaha, meaning weapons. So this you could refer to as military base, or you could refer to as an army. When he will come to the army of Dajjal, again scholars have mentioned that this is an indication towards militarily Muslims will only have what is the army which will be led by the Khalif. Yeah, Imam Mahdi radiallahu ta'ala an. Other than that, every army will be the army of Dajjal. They'll be in his following. So they say to him, have you come to believe in our God? At Dajjal, he says, no, my God is not khafa. Yeah, or khifa, meaning that he's not hidden. So he was referring to the Dajjal being an impostor, a liar. So they say that, should we not take his life here? One of the individuals from the army says, no, didn't the Dajjal say to us, our Lord, didn't he say to us that don't take anyone's life until you don't bring him to me? So they bring this man to the Prophet, to Dajjal. And Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri says that this man, he speaks with the Dajjal and he says to the Dajjal, you're the kadhab that the Prophet ﷺ warned us about. So Dajjal then says that beat him. They beat him so severely that his back and his front is cut into, or you say that it's sliced. So he's injured, he's wounded. Dajjal then says, do you believe now that I'm God? So the man says, now definitely basira, my foresight, insight, is become even more stronger. I definitely know that you're Dajjal now. So he splits this man from his head to his toes in two pieces. And he walks through this. In some narrations it's mentioned, he picks him up and he throws him like the way you throw a javelin or an arrow to a target. And then he calls him back. So the two pieces come back, he makes them come back to life. And he says, now do you believe me? And he says, now definitely I know you're Dajjal. So now why did this happen outside Madinatul Munawwara? After all of the events, after all the trials and the tricks and the illusions that he placed around the world. Because now after this, Dajjal cannot kill anyone. So this individual is the one who puts a stop to the killing of Dajjal. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places an iron rod or a steel, a piece of metal in the throat of that individual, and the Dajjal cannot cut through it. And then the Prophet ﷺ says that he's the greatest martyr. This individual is the greatest martyr. When this happens, after this, it's where he's hiding behind the Mount Uhud, and the angels, they direct him towards the way of Syria. Yeah, so when he comes to Syria, then obviously he meets. From Syria, then he goes towards Baytul Muqaddas, Palestine, at Bab al-Lud. Lud is a village which is located in Palestine. So he's going to come to the outskirts of Baytul Muqaddas, but he finds that Imam Mahdi is there with the army, and Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam has come. And Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam then is going to take his life at the maqam of Lud. But now, I'll finish off with a few more hadiths. Just one more hadith actually, yeah? Because there's too many hadiths to go through. But I'm sure everyone now has understood briefly why he's called Dajjal, and he's not going to force anyone to believe in him. His illusions and tricks, and he's going to have information about every single individual, how he's going to travel the earth. So he's going to use technology of this time. The same way the Jassasa are all instruments and tools which are used for spying and detecting. He'll have access to all of those things. So he refers to the system. Then the Jews, because you'll find that prior to him, obviously, Bayt al-Muqaddas will be conquered. Constantinople will be conquered the second time. So these are signs. Bayt al-Muqaddas will be occupied by Muslims. That's a cause that some of them are mentioned when Bayt al-Muqaddas will be occupied by Muslims. That's when the Dajjal will appear, because he's going to be angered by that. So what connection does he have with the Jews of Isfahan, the Jews of Iran, the Persian Jews, and Bayt al-Muqaddas? So now we know how the Jews in Palestine, occupied Palestine, how they're digging under Masjid al-Aqsa, finding the temple and building those tunnels, all of that stuff that's being mentioned. And then the amazing thing from the hadith that we understand is the Persian Jews. Most of the majority of Jews in Palestine are Persian Jews. So they're the Jews from Isfahan. When Palestine is going to be taken over by Muslims, those Jews are going to have to leave. So it will come to that number of 70,000 Jews following Dajjal. The final hadith that I mention is mentioned in Mishkat. The Prophet ﷺ says that he is going to come to a man, and he says to the man that I will bring back your father or your mother alive. I will make them come back to life. If I do this, do you believe in me? So by name and by time, he's going to mention, this is the time your parents died, this is the name of your father. Do you want me to bring them back to life? If I bring them back to life, will you believe in me? At that time, people will be, their iman will be rocked, and mentally they're going to be so baffled. They're going to think, this must be God then. So they're going to say, bring him back to life, bring them back to life, we believe in him. To an extent that he'll find people whose animals have died because of the drought. I said, do you want me to bring your camels back to life? Do you want me to bring your goats back to life? Your cows back to life? So what is he going to do? He's going to manipulate people. But from this, what do you understand? You understand that he's going to have information on every single individual. He's going to have information on every single individual. The same way, in Kitab al-Fitan, similarly to this, a hadith is mentioned where it says that the Muslims of that time will find him towards the east, and then he's going to try to enter Damascus, but he won't be able to enter Damascus. Then they're going to find him towards the riverside, but when they go to the riverside, he's going to disappear. They won't find him. Then what will happen is he will appear again, and he will command the lakes to dry up. Then he will cause an opening in the ocean. He will have two hands. So this is a different description, but the sanad is not weak. Nu'aym ibn Hamad mentions in Kitab al-Fitr, but he says he has two hands. One of his hands is bigger than the other hand. It's bigger than the other hand. With the big hand, he places it into the ocean, and he takes out, any of the animals of the ocean. So the mammals of the ocean, he takes them out. Whatever he wants to do with them, he does with them. So in Kitab al-Fitan, they say that his rule is not going to be only on earth, it's also going to be on the oceans. So these are different signs that are mentioned regarding him, Dajjal. But now, for us to understand this time, coming back to the hadith that I mentioned, that every fitna and trial and test, tribulation, whether it's small or big, from the time of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam up until the day of judgment, is in preparation for Dajjal. Everything that is being created by man and is being used in a way that it causes harm to one's deen and iman, that's part of the Dajjalic system. Yeah, so smartphones, internet, media, televisions. Some people even refer to the TV as being Dajjal, yeah, because of the one eye. But that was something at the time, that was a good 50, 60 years ago, probably before that when the TV was made. So you'll find that even the non-Muslims refer to the TV as being Satanic's box at the time. But then they obviously started acting and coming on it themselves and using it themselves. So these are all a build-up. Now coming back to we didn't obviously hold this lecture for that show or the series, of Messiah on Netflix. But obviously that's something which is going to cause harm. But people are going to be thinking to themselves, no, it's just a show. I know there's so many people who've seen it. There's so many people that have spoken to it, they've actually seen it and they're very normal about it, like, yeah, we've seen it. But see, these things, they plant seeds. Yeah, the reason why they're going to plant a seed is because when Dajjal appears, it's not going to be something unusual for the ones who are pre-planning and seeing all of these things. First question would be, why did Netflix create it? They say that it was just a script, a made-up script. It's a bit unusual that the script is similar to certain mazahib or deens, what they're teaching about the Antichrist. And then in that, from what I've been told, so I don't know if I'm right or wrong, from what I've been told, that they have a preacher, a Muslim preacher in the series, who keeps on reading certain verses of the Quran to a child, and the child grows up and he's the one who becomes the Messiah. So I'm not sure if this is true, but this is what I've been told. But again, where did the preacher come? What has Islam got to do with it? What has the ayat of the Quran got to do with it? If it's something just made up, why have you brought deen and mazahib into it? So it's not a script that you've just made up, is it? It's a script that you've actually made for a purpose, a reason. It's part of the Dajjalic system, the fitna of Dajjal. Now the Prophet ﷺ mentions the hadith in Abu Dawood Sharif. He said that at the time of Dajjal, you're going to find a man who believes himself to be a firm believer. And he's going to come to Dajjal, to see Dajjal. But when he leaves the Dajjal, he's going to be affected by the shubuhat, the doubts, the assumptions, the illusions, the tricks of Dajjal. And when he leaves the Dajjal, his iman is going to be rocked. It's going to be on a wave. He's going to be going here and there. So now you think to yourself, no one will be able to face him in that way. The Prophet ﷺ in another hadith says that when you hear about the Dajjal, try keeping away from him. If you know he travels to England, run from England, go to another region. When he comes to that region, go to another one. Just avoid him for 40 days. But now, we have to understand that all of these things, we've invited them into our homes, we've invited them into our lives. Now, if you're going to start reading, not Islamic perspective of what Dajjal is, Islamic teachings of what Dajjal is, but what Netflix is giving to you, are you telling me that it's not going to be detrimental to one's iman? It's not going to be harmful to one's iman? It is. And some of us now, we're probably going to take points from there. Some of us who've seen it, take points from it and try to compare them. And then some people, try to compare it in a way that they say, certain scholars of eschatology, they've mentioned this opinion, that interpretation, this opinion, that opinion. Oh, this is another opinion that Netflix mentioned. So people will probably say the same things. That's why it's important that you stick to Quran and Hadith. You stick to Quran and Hadith. Stick to what the companions alayhim ridwan understood about Dajjal. If you find that there's words in Hadith that are open for interpretation, and you find that something in this time, metaphorically, you can ascribe it to that word and use it in the meaning of that word, then it's permissible. But then again, this is not any layman, normal individual's job to do. Listen to scholars. So this is briefly something that we've summarized together just to have an understanding of Dajjal. But I do advise everyone that they listen to Sheikh Asrar Rashid Hafizahullah's lecture on Dajjal, the end of times. He's done them on 2 hours, 3 hours. I think he's gone through the first phase, second phase, third phase, fourth phase. So he's mentioned all of that. And bit tarteeb he's mentioned it. So he's mentioned all of the signs in order, how they will occur. And with him, the reason why I would say that out of most of the scholars of this time who are talking about the end of times, he is an individual who talks with reference and solid reference and proof. Yeah? If I sat here with no book, yeah, some of you would be in doubt, and you'd be thinking that he's talking from the top of his head. And if I can't quote the aqwal of the companions, if I quote the aqwal of the salihin, you're going to be thinking he's making stuff up, and many of them are making stuff up. Yeah, you won't find that they interpret it or give you reference from tafasir. They give you reference from commentary shuruhat of hadith. They give their own opinion. So this is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is my opinion. The question is, who are you? Yeah, bring a build up to it. Bring it from tafsir and tashrihat commentary, and now tell us in the light of those metaphoric words that have been used in relation to those words that the Prophet ﷺ used. Now, according to your mushahadat in this century, now tell us what you think about it. Then it makes sense, doesn't it? But if you're going to forget all the 1400 years scholars and ulama that have passed, and now you give your own verdict and your own opinion, it don't work like that. So he's the only individual, myself I would say, who actually, the tartib that he's mentioned, the order that he's mentioned, and how he's analyzed and investigated the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it makes sense. It makes sense. So for further information, everyone can go back to the lectures of Shaykh Asrar Rashid, listen to them, and try to understand it, according to modern times, how he mentions the politics, the economics, everything. He's mentioned all of that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand what we've heard about Dajjal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from Dajjal. And important thing is that maybe we won't be in the time of Dajjal, but our generations, coming generations, they probably will have to face Dajjal. So now you know that the system is so bad that our kids growing up, they're open to so much fitna. And it's very difficult for parents to even control that fitna now. So, even our grandchildren, Allah knows best what fitna they're going to be facing. So, for us to just make our children read the Quran or the Qaeda has become difficult. For them to even read the kalima has become difficult. You find kids, youngsters who are 13, 14-year-old, you ask them the kalima, they don't know. We've had students like that who didn't know the kalima. So I think what's going to happen to the coming generations. So the Prophet ﷺ said the knowledge of Dajjal is something that your children should inherit from you. They should inherit from you. So it's very important for everyone to make dua at all times. Like Sayyidah Aisha said, the Prophet ﷺ after every salah, he would make dua to Allah that Allah protect him from the fitna of Dajjal.